Hello, my name's Clare from Conscious Chemo, and I'm going to share some of my top highlights from the time I was on chemotherapy, the high dose, and I'll do a separate one for the low dose. Obviously, this is going to be one of them. Here I am on top of some mountain overlooking Buttermere Lake in the Lake District. I mean, look at that. It's just beautiful. I'm in between my 14th and 15th round of treatment. My hair's growing back. I've got a few side effects still. In fact, my side effects now are more from menopause than the actual treatment itself. But I've had a scabby nose now for about 3 months and a few bladder and tummy issues going on. But I haven't let that stop me coming up here. I'm not on my own or by myself. I like to say I'm with myself, my true self, my centre. There's always that duality, my human self and my soul, my spiritual self. And yeah, I mean, I arrived here yesterday. I'm having the most glorious time. Anyway, so this will be a highlight for that. But going back to the high dose chemo, I'm off the cuff here. But when I close my eyes and just think about my beautiful memories, so my cardio chemo night is going to be something I never forget. It was just beautiful, very spontaneous, and just celebrating the new look and accepting it, and just really feeling it doesn't change who we are on the inside. The time I had my hair shaved, the kids shaving my hair, that will be a highlight for me. It was just so connecting, really feeling the support from the kids. You know, they're now 14, 15 and 18, so they're off doing their own thing, but we all came together. It was a very precious moment. I really felt their presence, their love, their support. So that was beautiful. Sea swimming. What can I say? I'd been swimming in the summer. I carried on in the winter. The day before I started my high dose chemo, which was October the 2nd, I went in for a dip, and my friend had assumed that would be it. She wouldn't see me until my high dose had finished, and there I was the next morning, and the next morning, and the next morning. Literally, I probably went 5 mornings out of 7 throughout the whole thing. Probably started dipping down a little bit come January, but it was just so uplifting, enlivening. It was about being in nature as well as, to begin with, it was about feeling alive. It was like all my cells were dancing when I went into the water, feeling enlivened. And it was about being in nature, and again, just seeing the reflection of the sun. I'd be doing the sunrise in October, November times, and just seeing the sun come down on the sea, and it just beautiful. But then actually, as my treatment progressed, I realised it was also so beneficial for the treatment, because the treatment's so heating, and then obviously going in the seawater so cooling. And then since then, I've discovered Wim Hof, like the rest of the world, and how it can make the sympathetic nervous system more resilient. If I had 3 or 4 days off, which I have had later on, it lifts you. It does something to your emotions. So that's a huge highlight for me. The support I felt around that as well. So the connection. When I first started, nobody knew that I was going through the cancer journey, apart from a very close friend of mine or two that were also swimming or bobbing. And then obviously, as the hair was lost and I was changing, they'd start to notice, and people would start, and they were so great that it was quite nice that they hadn't known before, and just very bonding, and it also gave me a routine, which was really great. So that's a real highlight for me. It could be anything that makes you feel uplifted, anything that puts a smile on your face, whatever that is for you. But for me, that was my thing. The support that I had, I'm not going to forget the lifts that my friends gave me, the rota, the fact that I knew that there'd always be somebody there for me. So that sense of community, that's going to be always a highlight that I'll never forget. The gifts I received is another highlight. So unexpected, yet so heartwarming. And in fact, there was an occasion when I went up to have a heart scan. So because I'm on Herceptin, they scan your heart every 4 months, because that's one of the potential side effects is heart damage. And I parked in the cancer unit and had to queue up for quite a long time to get there, and then went to get the permit for the car park, and they said, I'm sorry, you can only park there if you're having chemotherapy. And because it was a checkup because of chemotherapy, I thought it'd be okay. And the way she came across made me feel, I just felt really unsupported in that moment. And as I moved the car and went and took it somewhere else, I was going to be late. I tried to just stay present, practiced, letting that go, staying present. Don't worry if you're going to be late. But I couldn't help it. I had this little emotional, just a little cry. And just then I just thought, she could have said, you're not supposed to park there. So for future, please don't, but I'll let you this time. I was only going to probably be 20 minutes, but she didn't. When I turned that around, I turned it around. It was the day before that my friends had sent me a hamper that they'd all chipped in for, with just all from a health food shop that one of them worked in, full of such thoughtful, healing gifts. I mean, everything you can imagine, from healthcare to personal care and hygiene to supplements, all nourishing. So that made me feel so supported and so loved. So those things can outweigh perhaps when you have a moment where you're not feeling as supported, which is going to probably happen occasionally. And as I've shared on another video, gifts don't have to cost any money. You could send somebody a link to a beautiful tune with some beautiful words that are just positive. So again, careful not to trigger, but anything uplifting. I'll share the one that my friend sent me. It was just perfect for the time. It could be a really inspirational quote that touches somebody. But the gifts that I have flowers, just cards, that and that sense of community again is going to be a high dose chemo highlight for me. Another highlight is on New Year's Eve. I had probably a low light and a highlight. It was definitely the most emotional I was during the whole experience. I've been pretty emotionally balanced throughout. I could probably count on my hand the amount of times I slipped and was very emotional. And my friend came round and sat with me in my garden and just talked. We just chatted, and as soon as she was there, I felt better. I just needed a distraction at that point. I think sometimes it's good to go inwards and meditate, but actually at that point I needed a distraction. And then when I came back, I was okay, but I was still very emotional. I think sometimes you just need to have a really good emotional clear out and let it happen and be okay with it and let it go through you, and just see that as healing. Perhaps something's healing there. But the fact that she was available and she insisted on coming round is a highlight. That was amazing. And then my teenage daughter, there was a time when I had somebody picking me up arranged for somebody to pick me up from the cancer unit, and then I ended up being 2 hours late because of having to wait, and the person that was coming couldn't, and I just put a message, not thinking that she'd be able to, and straight away my 18-year-old daughter said she'd come and pick me up. And teenage 18-year-old doing their own thing, working, dancing, but for her immediately, yes mum, and she was there, and that really meant a lot. So that was a highlight that I'll remember during my high dose. And then really learning to let go of any self-judgment is a huge highlight and a huge lesson that I've learned. I think when I first got the diagnosis, I was worried about how other people might see me, because I've always been in the health and wellbeing industry, yoga teacher, Pilates teacher, strong, fit, never ever had to say on any form that I fill out, I'm always clear of everything, never on any medication, and and so there was a bit of shame, I think, when I got the diagnosis, and also concern about what other people might think, and whether or not, if I was going to take chemo, I'll be honest and think I was probably, a part of me was worried about what other people might think of me. And then when I looked at that, I realised that was me judging myself, and that was really, really life-affirming, empowering and freeing, because once I realised that was me judging myself, I could let go of it. How liberating is that? So that is definitely a highlight of how I've been able to really self-accept, and even though I haven't been as physically well or as physically fit, and I have had these side effects, and even though I've managed them amazingly well and I've had a sense of well-being throughout, I've really had to meet myself and accept myself for having ailments that I've never had before and been used to, and accepting that there's vulnerability that comes with that, and being okay with the vulnerability. And that is quite beautiful when you can be with your vulnerability. And that's a definite high dose chemo and a low dose chemo highlight for me because of how liberating that is and how that feels. And then that really does feed into the art of surrender that I talk about, and how if you have to surrender to what's happening, which you can only do once you've accepted it. So there's an unfolding that needs to take place to get there. It's so empowering and it's so liberating. So that's a highlight. I would also say that the way I live my life now and the fact that it's changed is a highlight. At the beginning, I was, in fear about the fact that, because I've already read all the nutrition books, I'm very aware that you are what you eat. And so as soon as I got the diagnosis, I knew I would be changing my diet quite drastically. And I saw that as my life's going to change forever. Whereas now, I really can honestly say I'm really enjoying the changes that I've made. I never feel hungry. I feel nourished. I'm enjoying my food. More recently, I have wavered from it slightly when I felt good for doing so, just if I've been out. But I've really learnt a lot and enjoyed that learning. And it feels really good to be in tune with my body more than ever. I was already in tune with it before, but it's taken it to another level. And the way I feel about that. So really the way your mind feels and the way your body feels are inextricably linked. It's like a mirror there. So that's a highlight for me, actually, is the fact that it's motivated me to make changes that I probably should have already made. And of course I had the biggest motivational factor than ever before. And then alongside that, so going still on the theme of self-care, another highlight for me is how I really did delegate as much as I could. I still did bits and pieces, but I delegated. I gave myself time to heal. I slept, I rested, I did yoga nidras, I did coherent breathing, affirmations, meditations, kept up the yoga practice, even if that was a meditation, and, really allowed my body to heal and move away from this outdated belief system that's ingrained within all of us, that we have to be achieving, we have to be striving, we have to be doing, we have to keep busy. And I don't believe that is always the case. I think there's a time for doing and a time for being. And I think when you're going for a healing crisis, it's an absolute time for being. And that's part of the healing. So I think the medication's really good for the physical layer of our bodies, but of course what the yoga philosophy teaches you and what meditation you experience is that we're layers. So we're not just of the physical layer. We've got the mind, we've got the breath, we've got the emotions, and then we've got our true self. So whereas the medication might be healing, or not even healing really, but just killing the cancer cells effectively, we need to heal our bodies as well. So that's where the integration approach comes in, and the healing comes from the way you think, how much you rest. Are you tuned in to your deepest part of yourself, your divine feminine energy? Are you eating nourishing foods that will nourish not only you physically, but they will also nourish you mentally, and they will also nourish you on a soul level? So, looking at the cellular level and vibrational frequency. So that's a highlight for me, is that I was already on that path. I was already simplifying my life. I was already basing my decisions on what will give me the least stress rather than what's going to give me, the biggest reward, for example. I was already on that wavelength, but this has highlighted it even more, and it's made me live it even more, and it feels great, and it does feel liberating and freeing. And another highlight is that I did some courses myself. So whilst I was on the high dose chemo, I did, in fact, soon after my first round, I did a yoga for cancer course. So again, enabled me to be in a very chilled place, but I was still, taking on information that was going to be helpful both for me in that moment and then for other people later on, which felt good. So anything that makes you feel good is a sign that it's helpful. I was already, interesting enough, I'd already started a course on somatic yoga and somatic yoga for healing and recovery. At the time I thought it would be to support others, and of course as it unfolded I realised it was all very relevant for myself. Learnt loads from that. In fact, not learnt loads, but I've observed loads of those elements within myself during my healing journey, and it's brought to light things that my counsellors highlighted, what I learned in the journey, or what I experienced in the journey therapy. So I've seen lots of repeating patterns of these outstated stories, beliefs, projections that have all sort of come together during this experience that I think is going to enrich and enhance the way I live the second half of my life. So that's a highlight. It's so much growth and so much involvement. And then I did a yoga nidra training, having been receiving it a lot during my high dose chemo. I could only manage one day during the high dose chemo because I had it for one of the days and I couldn't get any Wi-Fi and this, that, and the other. So then I redid it again in the February, and that was the right time. So again, very nourishing, very, very healing. So as I was going through my healing journey, I was also learning about healing, and that is a highlight, and also it keeps your mind in a great place. So that might be something you decide to do during your high dose chemo, rather than feeling bored or feeling like you're wasting time or not doing anything. You could perhaps do an online course that makes you feel nourished, makes you feel good, so that but is healing at the same time. So something along those lines. So I'm sure there's lots more. There will be lots more. Oh, my yoga practice improved. That's another highlight for me. Even though I wasn't practicing my Ashtanga as often, when I did, I was actually accessing more postures. And I think that is because I had surrendered. I had accepted myself. I'd met myself where I was, and I'd been okay with it. I was being more present. So then, on an energetic level, things change in your body, and then you access more. I really do feel like there was that sense of surrender, and letting go enhanced my yoga practice. So there's some ideas, some offerings on some of my highlights, and to hope that will alleviate the fears and to let you know that there can be some highlights during your journey too. I'm also going to do one on my lowlights. There really weren't that many, but I think it's important to get the whole picture across. I did fare very well. I felt pretty good virtually all the time, and I had a few wobbles, so I'm going to share those in another video. So anyway, I hope this has been helpful. Thank you so much for listening. Wishing you all such love and glory and uplifting sensations and high vibrations and joy and fun and well wishes. Thank you for listening.